I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction. Wanna bet?
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Siege, the Toronto Maple Leafs stave off elimination. They were entering Game 4 down 3-0. The attempt at a comeback is on for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Don't mind me laughing, but it's very hard for them to do this. If they do it, it'll be historic. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, but what I would say to you is what we saw in Game 4 at least gives you the whiff of possibility that they're up to the challenge. Because they just spent, 48 hours being, subjected to a lot of speculation from people like you and I about who might come and go, what it might mean. And, being swept, don't make no mistake, avoiding a sweep is worth something, I think, in this instance, because they did show pushback. They showed battle level. They showed fight. They won a playoff game on the road the way you have to win a playoff game on the road, blocking shots, not giving up too many high danger chances. Obviously, they got a good break on the first goal. The game goes off the official, bounces out front to Nylander. They found a way. And I thought their top players played hard and showed commitment. And I have no idea if they can repeat it one more time, two more times, or three more times. But I think the way they won the game makes me go like, okay. They didn't go away quietly, which was obviously their goal. And so this is not a prediction. I have no idea what's going to happen. Maybe the season just ends Friday night. But they showed me enough to make me think, hey, they might have this in them. We'll just have to see how it goes.
What did you think of how Mitch Marner played? That's a guy, we were talking about guys who were getting picked apart in the last few days. That's a guy who's getting picked apart for his reaction to, I'm thinking of the specific comments where you say, we don't pay attention to stuff that's going on outside. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's a guy who has very much been under fire. It feels as if almost every year when the Leafs make the playoffs, his name comes up. What did you think of how he played?
I'll say that there's defiance in his game. That's what I saw. There was a degree of pushback. And look at Mitch Marner is not a big guy. What's made him one of the better players in the league is clearly his offensive gifts, his ability to see the ice. He's so creative. He's more of a finesse and skill player than anything else. But to play at this time of year, though, you need to add a little different element, I think. And you saw some in his game. I think he was credited with 3 or 4 hits on the night. Certainly was more physically engaged. Gets a goal, which I think will probably lift some weight off his shoulders. It's kind of ironic, actually. The 2 goals in the game by Toronto in a 2-1 win, very tight game, are William Nylander and Mitch Marner. And I actually think the best things those players both did had nothing to do with scoring. William Nylander showed a lot more defensive awareness, maybe commitment, whatever you want to call it. He was backtracking to the neutral zone, breaking up plays. He helped ease some of the burden on the defensemen that were on the ice when he was out there playing, because I think he really was showing a different level of engagement defensively. And I'd say, Mitch Marner is always more defensively aware, but he got some of his swagger back, Julian. That's the way I see it. I mean, what made Game 3 so perplexing is just the stakes were high, right? You're down 2-0 in the series at that time. You're expecting a statement type of night from all the top players in that moment, just given all they've put into the season, right? They're more than 90 games in at this point. And for the core players on the team, they're 7 years in or 5 years in the case of John Tavares, but they've been here a long time. And Mitch just looked a little lost in that game. But I like the pushback in Game 4. I like seeing him a little edgy even. He's taking those glove shots at the buzzer from Matthew Tkachuk, and then he's asked about it. Him and Tkachuk, of course, played for the London Knights together, former teammates, know each other well. And he said, "I don't give a flying, what the swear word is." There was a little edge there, and I think that's good. I do think it's necessary to have a different level of commitment to win the playoffs, and Mitch Marner was leading the way for the Leafs in that game. And of course, then he gets rewarded with a goal, a bit of a seeing eye shot from distance. It's just funny how those things kind of work out. And I think because he's been under such pressure to produce, I really do believe he hasn't scored since game 2 of round 1, Julian. So I think that even just a goal that goes in that way might free him up a little mentally to get back to doing some of the stuff he does best.
There's been so much pressure on the core four. Like that phrase has been used a lot the last few days, especially once the series ended up being 3-0 in favor of the Panthers. And good on Nylander and Marner for those two guys, just for them to score. But that pressure obviously is not going to be alleviated. What about for management? What about for Kyle Dubas? What about for Brendan Shanahan, who, look, I this is the first time I've seen him around the team all playoffs long. You've obviously been following the team. You may have seen him in other points, but like there's like a shot that like tic-tac-toe, or there's like a GIF that he put up. And like you see guys in the Leafs box, and like Brendan Shanahan's kind of in this curious position where this TV's kind of blocking him. Like there's like a weird conspiracy in my head thinking like he purposefully picked that spot just so he can sort of be hidden. But like I'm curious about the pressure that those two guys, Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan, are facing throughout this series, because you have to think their jobs are on the line.
Well, it's immense. And, I've talked over the years to various management people in these situations, and it's such a helpless feeling when you get into playoff series. I mean, obviously there's things behind the scenes that they can try to help the coaching staff. They're another set of eyes in terms of bouncing ideas off. They can maybe pull a player aside here or there to try to help out in that way. But there's really, objectively speaking, there's not all that much a GM or team president can do other than watch the games up in the press box alongside me and my colleagues. They can't really affect the outcome any more than they already have by building the team and making the decisions they did that got the Leafs to this stage. And so I think it's got to be tough watching it. And, it's funny, I've obviously crossed paths with them, both in Tampa and at the games here in South Florida. We were in the elevator together. Actually, it's kind of an awkward feeling right after the game 3 overtime loss. Like right in the moments after, you're all just jammed in this small elevator. It's, I can only imagine what's been going through their minds. I mean, they're as aware of this as anyone. I mean, they don't need someone in the media to point out that, hey, if this doesn't work, you might not have anywhere to work yourself next year. And, in the case of Kyle Dubas, of course, being on an expiring contract, I mean, I certainly think he'll have a job somewhere, if not in Toronto. But, it was interesting to see Shanahan, and I'll put it that way, in the management box, because he has not been watching all the time from there. I'm not trying to fuel speculation here about anything, because I think I know a little bit from talking to him in the past. He likes to watch sometimes from right down low at ice level. I think he's almost maybe even a little bit superstitious about that sort of thing. And he's been around, like he's been at practice through the playoffs. Him and Dubas have stood together and are talking, all those sorts of things. But to see him in there, there's not a lot of accidents. I just wonder if, maybe there's some unity there. Even the day before, they were all sitting together. They had a practice day here in Florida, and Brendan was wearing like a Leafs hoodie. I'd never seen him. He always looks so like perfectly put together in a suit. Maybe in this, it sounds weird, but maybe when you're sort of facing elimination, when you're down 0-3, when kind of everything's on the line, maybe it almost brings people closer together, because you probably get a gallows humor behind the scenes, is my guess. Probably some jokes about the situation. How else do you alleviate tension, right? And I actually think for the players now more than management, I think having the 2 days between game 3 and 4 in this series might have helped the Leafs. I mean, Morgan Riley said explicitly he found that time helpful to sort of really work through his thoughts and like restore belief and just, kind of process where they were at. I think the Leafs are probably as stunned as their fan base to find themselves down 0-3, especially after finally winning a playoff series, just 8-9 days before. And, that might have contributed. I mean, you get to rest your mind and your body a little bit before that game. And we saw, as I mentioned, like a real commitment, I think, to playing the hard way to win. And now there's no 2 off days. It's going to be every other day with travel. And so it's going to be a slog if the Leafs can extend this thing out. But, I mean, it was kind of interesting, too. Like, Sheldon Keefe's mood changed in those days. obviously he was sort of emotional after the Game 3 loss, and there's an edge of attention with the questions being asked. It's a tough time. But then on the morning of Game 4, Keefe basically gave up his whole lineup, like didn't disguise anything the way he's kind of been doing in the playoffs. Was almost just like this is the team that's he's ride or dying with his guys, so to speak, and I just wonder. We'll see where this goes. I mean, look, they lose Friday. Who knows what we're talking about? But it's just funny. Like if they ever do manage to come back, I wonder if they'll look back on that period where everyone kind of came closer together, under like the most direct heat you could be under the spotlight, under the media speculation. I mean, look, we talked about each other on the previous show, Julian, but I basically wrote a column with their season over, right? And maybe it'll be egg on my face and a lot of others if somehow they manage to do the impossible here.
Like if they do the impossible, I was talking about it with a few other friends yesterday. Like, I mean, that's nothing short of historic, obviously, but like just the thought of the Leafs, like if it gets to that point, they somehow come back from a 3-0 deficit, like the core, their place in history, like they're going to be like remembered as like heroes in a certain sense, right? Like that's when they'll officially get that label of truly being different. But of course, that's putting the cart before the horse at this point.
Right, but if you're them, I think you have to embrace that. Like, I think that I wonder if they're talking about that a little bit, because it is a chance to just sort of give a giant middle finger to anyone who's ever questioned or doubted them, right? And there's a lot of people in that camp. I mean, let's face it, they've given us lots of reason to question and doubt them too. I mean, it's not as though those are made up narratives. None of this is personal. You know what I'm saying? It's more that they have consistently played down to the moment and had trouble getting through the elimination style games. But they can wipe away a lot of years of history. This is one thing that they have said again and again. Even the very first day training camp, I remember Kyle Dubas saying, it's another chance to change the story, right? If they change the story has changed. The labels that they have, the things that are written and said will all flip 180 degrees in one day if they could ever get the job done. And, I still think, look, I don't know if the problem now, I think that the real issue going down 0-3 is you can play a really good game and lose, right? Like it's not, that's just a fact. It's hockey. Weird things happen. So you in some ways you've just removed all your margin for error. But I think even if they can just force it to Game 6, like I think there's value every time that they can show the pushback, show that they care, prove. I mean, I've never doubted their care, but I think sometimes fans think that way. Just because, I'm a little closer to it and know the guys. Like I see how heavily it weighs on them when they've failed to deliver in the big moments. Like I don't think the issue at all has been care. It might almost be care too much at times, especially when I think of a player like Mitch Marner, a local guy with a lot on his shoulders, I think, who puts a lot of pressure on himself. Some of the years maybe where he hasn't delivered in those big moments, you just wonder almost like if you almost want to get him on the psychologist couch a little bit, right? And get his mind in a good spot. That's what I liked in their Game 4. I thought that they had the right mindset. They clearly played in a way that could allow them to have success. They protected Joseph Woll, right? We haven't even talked about the fact that they've thrown in an unproven goaltender here, through an injury to Ilya Samsonov. And I didn't think they asked too much of him in that moment. I mean, he was solid. He made the saves he had to make, but it wasn't like a flurry of odd man rushes. And, they got hemmed in a little bit, but it wasn't like earlier in the series, where Samsonov, I think at times has really been put under duress by the Panthers. I thought the Leafs protected a goaltender in that situation. He's making his first ever pro playoff game start. He never started a playoff game in the American Hockey League. And he handled himself well. And now we get the chance to dream of an interesting series, but in my mind, it doesn't really get interesting unless I'm getting on a plane and flying back here to Fort Lauderdale in 2 days' time.
Because you've been on so many of those flights, you would so love another one, wouldn't you?
I'm not going to complain. I mean, I am living my dream, man. Like these are the biggest games of the year. I'm not one of those media guys that's bitter every time the series goes longer. I mean, I guess that if I'm being honest, there probably have been a few instances in my life, specific instances where I just wanted a series to end, not because I was cheering against a particular team, but I just wanted a few days off, probably. But I'm prepared to go 7 in this round if that's what's in the offing. But it's going to be difficult. I mean, the Panthers, the Panthers have history in front of them too. Like they've been a tremendous story, man. 6 wins in a row in the playoffs is tough to do, right? And they were left for dead 6 weeks ago, including on this podcast. So, now they're looking at the chance. They're starting to talk about, look, we have a Stanley Cup final here. Like it's the cool part of the playoffs, right? It happens slowly and fast at the same time. It's kind of like an optical illusion, because it takes forever, right? Like this series is only at 2 games in the last 6 days. So it's playing out slowly. They're slogging through all these media availabilities and all this stuff. But then you look around, all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, we're one of 8 teams left. It's going to be 4 before you know it. And as we've talked about previously, I don't think there's one alpha dog out there. I mean, it might be the Oilers, I guess, but this is such a weird playoff. So this Leafs-Panthers series is the closest series, even though it's 3-1. The games have been 4-2, 3-2, 3-2, and 2-1. I mean, they've all been kind of one-shot, either-way type of games. And that's kind of the irony, too, that the Panthers built a 3-0 lead and that we've been so hard on the Leafs, is that the Leafs have legitimately, especially the last 3, been in the game with a chance to win it. They had a lead in each of the last 3 games in the series by scoring the first goal and the first 2 in game 2. So it's just kind of funny the way it's happened. But yeah, I mean, the Leafs, I think they really want to put pressure on Florida. I don't think pressure comes in the equation unless or until they win game 5. I think if you are coming back here for game 6, and again, because it's going to be every other day now with 3-hour flights in the middle, and there's not going to be a lot of time to slow things down and regain your bearings. So I think that's what the Leafs are trying to embrace is just to actually put some pressure on the Panthers and see how they handle it.
Okay, last thing before I get to You Can Bet That. Is there a scenario where during this, because we're all talking about whether or not there's going to be big changes with the Leafs, is there a scenario where it doesn't happen? Is it only applicable if they somehow come back and win it in 7? If, let's say, they force it to 6, is there a possibility where damage could be limited?
It's hard to say. It's really, I don't have the answer to that question. I have to think if they get it to game 7, though, and you lose a game 7, if you look, the Leafs are at the result stage of where they're at, right? It's not about moral victories. And they needed to win a round, which they did. I think not going quietly or easily against the Panthers shows something. But, change is inevitable anyway. I mean, part of the reason for the change is that it's been a number of years. Part of the reason is there's little contractual decisions, whether it's the fact William Nylander can be signed to an extension or Austin Matthews on July 1st, the fact that Kyle Dubas doesn't have a contract. I think if they lose in this series, there's still probably some degree of change. I don't know how deep it'll be. I think had they been swept, had they just sort of folded last night, I think that the possibility or the likelihood of bigger change was there, because your ownership of this team, I don't think you can watch that and feel confident in running it all back. But sure, it's crazy to say after all these years, but another win or two makes a big difference on how this looks, how this feels, and ultimately how the decisions will unfold when it comes time to make those decisions.
Okay, we're going to go to You Can Bet That, and then we're going to touch off on the Oilers Golden Knights series after that segment.
You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Brought to you by Sports Interaction. Get in the action and make a play. 19 plus. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to You Can Bet That. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. I've got another one of Dangle's doozies for you, Seach. Matthews on Matthew, this is called. Most points, goals, and assists between Austin Matthews or Matthew Tkachuk for Game 5 of the Panthers-Leafs series. Matthews the favorite at -133. Actually, no, sorry, misreading that. Matthew Tkachuk the favorite at -105, but Matthews also at -133. Who are you picking?
I would lean towards Austin Matthews. I think he's actually played a little better in the series. Tkachuk had a big Game 1. And has been a little quieter since then. I mean, there's not too much quiet about the way Matthew Tkachuk plays. We saw him in the scrums and the like, but hasn't really been generating a ton offensively. I think if you look at the underlying numbers for Austin Matthews, he's been Toronto's best player consistently. I mean, obviously from a game in, game out standpoint, that isn't always the case, but I almost feel like he's a little bit due. He's had some looks. He's had some posts in this series. I mean, he hasn't scored yet in the series. You don't find many 5-game stretches where he goes without a goal. And so I would be inclined, with the game being at home, with the stakes for the Leafs, to say that Austin Matthews is going to have his moment on Friday.
Okay. I would have gone the opposite, honestly. Feel as if we're still waiting for that big game from Matthew Tkachuk, but we're allowed to disagree on this show every now and again.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it with a ton of conviction. I mean,
Me neither.
but my inclination would be Austin Matthews. I think that he's been around it and he's just needing a breakthrough. And you know, I've just watched the guy play enough games. I'm never thinking that he's going to have 10 games where he doesn't score. It doesn't happen. So, yeah, I think that, and the Leafs have to go win that game too. Like, that's the other thing. The stakes are a little different on one side than the other.
Absolutely true. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Manscaped. Friends, family, and loved ones, I bet you haven't purchased a Father's Day gift yet, have you? Not to fear, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming are here, and I'm talking about our friends at Manscaped. They're saving the day again with the total package for the father figure in your life this year. It's time to upgrade his game from waist to face with this exclusive offer. Have him join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get 20% off, free shipping as well, with the code CJShow at manscaped.com. Let's talk about the Father's Day MVP. We've talked about it a lot on the show. The Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you will find the lawnmower trimmer, the 4.0 edition, really good. A brand new Weed Whacker 2.0, both for your ear and your nose. Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, Crop Reviver Toner, Performance Boxer Briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of those goodies. And don't forget about the Beard Hedger Pro Kit as well, just in case you got one of those long beards or anything like what CJ has, really. I know he's got the gray in his beard. He likes to talk about it a lot. You can get one of those beard hedgers to trim some of that too. Some conditioner and beard shampoo as well, beard oil, beard balm, 2 free gifts as well, including the beard comb and scissors. I'm telling you, man, this package has everything. If your father's grooming routine is already dialed, make sure to hook him up with those boxers as well. The Performance Boxer Briefs, they feel really comfortable, really sleek. They are the best boxers for men of all ages. Whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun, these boxers breathe without breaking a sweat. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CJShow at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Just use the code CJShow. Make this Father's Day one he won't forget with Manscaped. For those not watching on YouTube, CJ is in the middle of the airport in Fort Lauderdale. I gotta say, just shout out to you being, we got to move schedules around in order to make it work all the time for these shows. But the fact that you're willing to do these shows from the airport, like, thank you for, doing that. Like, that's really cool.
I'm getting lots of funny looks because I got like my little tripod set up here. I've got a small camera light. I see a few people like double taking, like, what is this guy doing? I'm literally set up on a garbage can, like on top of the garbage can.
Way.
Yeah. If anyone's been to Terminal 2 at Fort Lauderdale International Airport, it is a gong show terminal. It's always busy. There's not really quiet spaces. There's not really much just like food court type seating anywhere. So I'm just literally living my work life here and getting some funny looks as people go by.
Yeah, literally as like you're answering questions, I'm just spotting people in the background. There was a guy in a Leafs jersey who went in I don't know what restaurant's behind you, but he like went in, and I'm just wondering, like, I wonder if he knows that Chris Johnston is like how many feet away from him. And I wonder what he'd do if he realized.
I actually got stopped twice on the concourse last night by fans of the podcast. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, there was a lot of people repping blue and white down here. I don't know if they're snowbirds that live down here or just flew down for the games, what have you. But yeah, took a couple selfies on the concourse last night with CJ Show listeners.
CJ Show selfies with 100%ers. I like it.
Justin Thomas was at the game last night too. I didn't see him though.
The golfer?
Yep, the pro golfer.
Oh yeah. I wonder if now that makes me wonder if Brooks Koepka is going to make an appearance.
Well, he was in Toronto for Game 2. Took some selfies with fans, and it was circulating on social media. He was there wearing a Panthers jersey. The Live Golf Tour has a tournament this weekend. So I don't know if he would have been able to make yesterday's game, but yeah, I mean, like, look, we're right in golf country here, right? I mean, a lot of the best PGA Tour players live within half an hour drive of the Panthers arena. So I guess it only stands to reason they got a few fans in that sport.
Makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about another playoff series going on involving another Canadian team, the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. You made a really great point in the last segment where that's the Leafs-Panthers series is 3-1 for Florida, but the games there seem to be close. Whereas you have Vegas and Edmonton where they seem to be trading these wins. And I don't know if I get that same sense of closeness. And I don't get that sense of one team firmly grasping the series over the other. One team seems to generate momentum, then the next team, then back to one team, then to the other. You could say that about Dallas and Seattle too, but especially so in the case of Edmonton and Vegas. What do you make of that series?
Yeah, you don't want to miss the first period of games in that series, because usually after the first period, you're just watching to see what chaos is going to ensue, because usually the outcome is kind of sealed in one direction or another. It's an interesting series. I give the Oilers credit now. They've taken two pretty big punches in games 1 and 3 and had to sort of answer them and not allow a series to kind of get in the situation, for example, the Leafs did. And they've come back strongly and really had strong openings in games 2 and 4 to even it up. You have to the 100%ers will know I've been backing the Oilers from the start. So I'm certainly not seeing anything yet that makes me doubt or second guess my pick. The fact that Laurent Brossoit has left injured and given way to Aiden Hill and the Golden Knights net, makes me think the Oilers got a little bit of an opportunity there. And, I just think that they have the right makeup. I mean, obviously they have great players, but it seems to me you're seeing the things you want out of a playoff hardened team that they know the importance of not letting things get too far away from them, of squandering too many opportunities. And we'll see what happens now with some of the potential suspensions in that series to really the two most impactful defensemen, Alex Pietrangelo, who had the big slash on Leon Draisaitl away from the play, and then an automatic instigator fighting major went to Darnell Nurse in the last 5 minutes of the game. So that's supposed to be an automatic 1-game suspension. So perhaps both teams will be down their most important defenseman, come game 5. But selfishly, because from an entertainment standpoint, you'd like the games to be closer. But I do think the Oilers have shown us something here. I mean, they went down even against LA too, right? Like they just look composed in the tough moments, and that's obviously what you need to somehow get 16 wins in the spring and lift that cup.
Honestly, I want to focus on the Pietrangelo slash, and we can get into the Nurse fight as well. Like, I saw that slash at the end of the game, and I thought, okay, he should at least get a fine. But there's a part of me thinking, are they going to suspend him? Are they not going to suspend him? It just feels as if with the inconsistency with some of the judgments being handed out this postseason, I think you have every right to wonder if they would even go so far as to do that. He's going to be in a hearing, at the time that we're getting this, he's going to be in a hearing today. But it just, at least for me, just trying to just keep stock of how all of these different punishments have been doled out. I think I'd every right to think, hey, maybe they don't punish him, but they definitely will. It seems like in this case.
I would be stunned if he's not suspended at least 1 game. I mean, that's just my view of the play. If you remember the 3-game suspension Michael Bunting got in the first round for hitting Eric Chernak in the head, I know a big part of what went into the player safety decision there is basically he went out of his way to a player who's not in the play and injures him. Now, in this case, it seems that Leon Draisaitl came through that okay, but it's hard not to view that in the same light. Again, it's a different type of infraction. Draisaitl did have the puck and had gotten rid of it, but Pietrangelo goes well out of his way and delivers a pretty meaty slash to an area that could do damage to probably the best player on the Oilers right now. I mean, Draisaitl might be their MVP in the moment, right? And so I don't see how we would deem that not to be intent to injure. And I just think the league can't let that kind of stuff go because, the consequences are evident. If players see that is not checked, we're going to have people running around, injuring others. I think it's inevitable. So I would be stunned if he's not suspended, but I've been surprised before, man. I think in general, player safety is too lenient. Just my view. I'd like to see them give out longer suspensions, more suspensions. I think that it would serve the sport, but obviously George Peros and the staff he has working for them view it a little bit differently than I do.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a conversation for another time when we have more time, but just generally I want to see more consistency in these punishments. Just if you see something similar, you look at it and you think, oh, this was one game for this person, but for another situation when it's happening to somebody else, it's like a fine or not worth that same punishment. I find there's just too many of those situations, and it's just really hard to keep up with what should be suspendable, how long should be suspended for. I've put up on Twitter the wheel of justice at different points of the postseason, just a cruelly drawn wheel that's not even a proper, anyway, I don't need to describe it too much, but that's basically just what it is. It's just inconsistent. Right.
And part of it is, look, the infractions themselves are so different at times, but I just think you definitely can have some, like, this was not a hockey play, we would call it, right? Like, it wasn't like he slashed him while trying to knock the puck off his stick or in a battle and maybe just, missed a little bit, which is sort of what happened. Like some of the cross checks we've seen in these playoffs, I'm thinking there was one by Sam Lafferty on Ross Colton. I think it was just a battle that went wrong. Like, it wasn't like Lafferty intentionally meant to hit Colton in the head. He ended up getting a fine there. And so I think that's a sign that player safety sort of shares my view, but it wasn't an intent to injure. I don't know how you can view this as anything other than in a 5-1 game or whatever it was at the time, Alex Pietrangelo taking an opportunity to try to take a chunk out of Edmonton's top player, one of their top players, and it's in front of everyone and chaos ensues. I think that the league has to step in and at least sit him down for a game.
Other than the suspensions that could be doled out, just with the way that the series has gone so far and the fact that it's still just kind of even on its head, do you feel that, like, I know it's not really pulling in any other way, but how do you see these next 3 games going if it goes to that point? Because it could go 7. I think it's going to go 7, but not to telegraph it.
I hope that they play a 2-1 or 3-2 game at some point. I'm saying this even selfishly because they're lined up with the games I'm covering the same night. So by the time I'm getting my post-game work done, I get a chance to check in on the Oilers game and it's 4-1. It's just like, oh, this isn't that compelling to be watching. I think it's going to, I would imagine, if you had asked me this question though before the last couple of games, I would have said, okay, it's going to tighten up now. Like you get the sort of crazy ones out of the way. And now they're going to play playoff style hockey. I guess it just depends how it's refereed too. There's a lot of power plays in the game 4, and obviously with Edmonton's power play, that's an area where they can cash in and put up some regular season type of numbers. But I really don't know what's going to happen. It's been such a strange, crazy series back and forth. Vegas is a tough place to play. I know it's been the year of the road teams by and large, but the Golden Knights might go home and defend home ice in game 5. And then Edmonton's in that situation that I've been talking about where they do seem to find a response when they need one, but eventually you want to see them get on the front foot and not put themselves in that spot. Game 5 goes kind of without saying. It's just so pivotal to set someone up with at least 2 chances to close this thing out. But it's 2 close teams, 2 the best teams in the Pacific, and 2 teams that will probably be favored to win the cup, whoever comes out of this entering the next round, I would think. Although I'll leave that to David Bastel and the fine folks who handicap these things.
Very fair point. If you can, give me a quick thought on the Seattle-Dallas series.
I just wonder if Seattle is going to wear down a little bit, like not having game breakers. I've spoken a lot. I really like watching them play. I respect it. They're relentless. They roll you multiple lines at you that have done damage, a lot of sort of unsung type of heroes through these playoffs. But I just wonder if they're going to have enough to get through this round as they head to game 5.
Okay. And give me a quick thought on Carolina, New Jersey, the Hurricanes, obviously in the driver's seat.
The Hurricanes, one of the scouts was talking about, like they're not tough to play against in the sense they're not out there gooning you up, but they make the game tough, right? They're so good and structured defensively. They're not allowing a lot. the Devils came off that series with the Rangers where, especially after those first two games, they really had their way offensively, created a lot of chances, scored a lot of goals in a couple of the games. That's gone away on them, and I think it's been difficult. I think that one's over. I don't see it. I mean, obviously, mathematically, it's possible. It's like anything, but I think that the Hurricanes' experience and their structure will be enough to carry them through with 3 chances to close it out.
Okay, you don't have to be as quick with this next one, but this is the first time we get to talk about it. The draft lottery goes down this week. Chicago ends up with the first overall pick, so that means Connor Bedard will likely begin his career in Chicago. What are your thoughts on that?
The Blackhawks tanked. They did it properly. I mean, I don't know what your views. I don't know if we've ever really gotten into the sort of moral views on tanking. To me, it's smart roster management when you're so far gone from being so far gone, and that organization, has stockpiled draft picks and they've ironic. They won a game, I believe, in Pittsburgh, wasn't it? Late in the year, and everyone freaked out. And if they didn't win that game, they don't win the draft lottery. So, I mean, the lottery really is a lottery. And now everything changes in Chicago. Everything. That's how special I think Connor Bedard is. I think it puts an onus on them to probably scale up quicker than they thought they were going to. Maybe one more down year. 1 year where they're not looking to be competitive, but I don't think it's a 3-year window before we're talking about them potentially pushing for a playoff spot. So there's a lot of work to be done. But, I mean, another franchise-altering bounce for a franchise that's been fortunate to have, a few high-end players that panned out. Obviously, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, chief among them.
I'll say it. You don't know if you want to say it, but I'll say it. I did like the fact that Chicago got that first overall pick. I get that that's how the ping pong balls fall, but I also see what the reputation's been like for Chicago. We've discussed the situation with them over the last year and a bit. To see them kind of, rewarded essentially with a generational player just kind of falling into their lap, kind of taking over after Taves and Kane have left the organization, it didn't really sit well with me, to be honest with you. And I felt very, I think it sucked. I'll be real, it sucked. I'm not going to be one of those people who are going to be like, oh, the draft lottery was rigged and all that. But I didn't like it. And I think that
I'll tell you this.
It sucked.
It's not rigged. It is not rigged.
Oh, I know that for sure.
I will say that
unequivocally.
No, I know, but it's just like, I don't know why it always persists. Maybe it's because they do it behind closed doors, but they do it with scrutineers from every team there. They do it literally with an accounting firm conducting it. It's not rigged. Sorry, I'm not pushing against you on that. I just saw so much of that on Twitter and stuff, and I'm like, we can know it's not rigged. I'm not even going to name the teams or the situations, but the league wouldn't have placed every one of these players in the places they've been placed on purpose.
I agree with that. I think a lot of that too. Kevin Weeks had the production flub where he kind of already spoiled the fact that Columbus would draft third, and I think that fueled some of that a bit too. But no, I don't believe for a second that it's rigged, but I do feel that seeing Chicago get Connor Bedard, even if it is just a matter of luck, like that's I don't feel great about that. And I think I've either said on this show or other shows that like I don't even feel that they should be getting any first round picks because of what's happened with the Kyle Pete situation. But I digress on that. But I just have to put that out there. I'm not necessarily a fan of them winning that pick, but that's just my opinion.
I don't equate the two myself, but I mean, look, you're entitled to your opinion, of course. I mean, no one is really left over from that era. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, you have to move forward, I suppose. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting there. I mean, they have so many first round picks too, right? They got the 2 for Brandon Hagel. Like they could. I think the question should be how quickly can they contend again? I know that sounds crazy when you just saw their year, but I mean that's you get the one guy in the middle of the ice who's a game breaker who could be potentially at some point the best player in the league, and all of a sudden we're looking at you differently. But we should also look at Edmonton and Toronto and all these other places and know that one player doesn't guarantee they're 7 and 8 years in with their star players and still trying to get over that hump. So.
Last thing before Stick Taps, Flyers officially naming Keith Jones as president of hockey operations and they take off the interim tag from Daniel Briere. So he's now full-time GM of the Flyers. A quick thought there?
This is a general thought as opposed to a specific thought on the Flyers. I'm still waiting and wondering when NHL teams are going to think a little more advanced about how they build their front offices. And I want to be clear. I know Keith Jones socially, I really like him. Like, he's really he's a real one. He's a genuinely good dude, very personable. I'm sure he knocked it out of the park in his interview because of that. And he lives in Philadelphia. He's a Flyers guy. It's not about him for me. It's more about, like, why are more teams not copying Tampa? Like, I've always wondered that. For like lack of a better word, and it's because I lump myself into this category. It's like, when are more nerds going to run teams? And I don't say that with any scorn, because I think of myself sometimes in that.
Nerd is not a bad word.
Right.
Nerd is not a bad word.
What I mean is more lawyers, more people at MBAs with high level experience running big businesses and other industries. Like, I don't understand the idea of, just in general, just on the surface, again, not about the individuals here, a rookie president and a rookie GM at the same time doesn't make much sense to me. And trust me, in my network of people I talk to, this is being discussed behind the scenes in hockey too. And so it's not me taking any run at Keith Jones or Daniel Briere, who I've got a lot of time for both guys. It's just, it doesn't seem like an optimal way to run a big business to me. Like, there's people out there that have been GMs for 10 and 15 years that are still at a working age. Like, that's the person I would want at minimum in that type of role, because at least that person has an experience level they could share with Danny Briere. But here we are. I think a lot of teams still default to people that played hockey, and that's worked in a lot of instances. I mean, Joe Sakic has a huge hand in building the team that won the most recent Stanley Cup. Steve Yzerman had a big hand in building the Tampa teams, even though he'd moved on by the time they got the job done. I'm not saying that there's no role for hockey people in the sport, but I think that there should be more rounded backgrounds in front offices just in general. And I think it's inevitable, but then another year goes by. This is another round of hires that are not proving my thesis to be correct.
Well said. Do you have a stick tap before we go?
You know, I'll stick tap Joseph Wall just because I'm such living. It's so funny in the playoffs, Julian. Like, I'm living this series, right? Every single day, I'm going to the media availabilities. I'm going to the games. You know, I'm really caught up in it. And so I didn't step back and take a big picture thought, but pretty cool to see someone thrown into the situation he was, to have a good game. He seems like a really mature, nice kid. And so he's top of mind as we stand here. So I'll stick tap him for, you know, getting put in a tough situation, down 0-3 and having to start your first Stanley Cup playoff game. It's I think it was his 13th or 14th ever NHL appearance. You know, he started this year. This is ironic. He lives in St. Louis in the offseason. He had a knee injury last summer. He actually rehabbed last summer with Matthew Tkachuk, who also off seasons in St. Louis. But he missed training camp. Like, it's pretty cool to see him put together the kind of year he did, given where it started, and got a big win that he'll probably remember the rest of his life. So stick tap to him for success.
I will give my stick tap to Golden Knights defenseman Zach Whitecloud, who unfortunately on ESPN, an anchor made an insensitive joke about his last name. It just so happens that Zach is from the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation. And he took the time to address that after that incident happened, and he actually forgave the anchor. And, you know, it's an opportunity for a lot of people to learn from those types of situations. And just want to give a stick tap to Zach for just addressing that situation with class.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of, you know, people make mistakes. I understand that, and I think the anchor called him, gave him an apology too, right? So
that too. So yeah, these things happen. So stick taps to Joseph Wall and Zach Whitecloud. You got a flight to catch, my man. So we're going to let you go. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the show. We'll have questions. Subscribe to the podcast however you consume the podcast. Siege, I hope you catch your flight on time, buddy.
Yeah, what city will I be in on Monday? I can't even keep track of that. I mean, I guess we got to know what happens in Friday's game. But I might be right back here at the airport doing a hit with you. Who knows? I've got this garbage can trademark now, so I know where to go if that's the circumstances as they play out.
Yeah, get some masking tape and just put an X so that way you remember the spot.
I'll put a CJ sign on here.
Ooh, put a CJ sticker.
I have to do that in the press room. I usually leave a little CJ sign to save my spot.
Oh, yeah, you should do that. You should absolutely look. This podcast is taking over, man. We got to mark our territory however we can.
Exactly. You know what? Monday, I just thought of it. So game 5 would be Friday. If there's a game 6, it would be Sunday. So I actually would be, if this happened, I would be flying home on Monday back to Toronto. I literally could do it from this garbage can again, and we might be previewing a game 7. Or maybe we're just knee deep in talking about the offseason and what it all means. Like that's the playoffs are crazy. It's crazy.
They are insane. But already Monday's episode, regardless of what happens, I am excited for, and it is going to be in depth. It's going to be fun, and there's going to be a lot to talk about, man. Get some rest. I'm going to try to get some rest. And yeah, we'll talk to you all on Monday. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction. Wanna bet?
Inside the Game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.